It's now become tradition for Lindsey Graham to appear every Sunday on the morning shows and defend whatever indefensible action Donald Trump took in the previous week. And it usually ends with Lindsey Graham in a spat with the host, screaming and melting down. And of course, we saw that again this week. But there was a little twist on Lindsey's appearance on Fox. The fact that Donald Trump's closest advisor outside the White House in Laura Loomer shared some very personal news about Lindsey Graham, stating in a deposition the thing that he has likely been hiding his entire life. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we can get into the meltdown that Lindsey had on Fox, for a couple of reasons, I want to start with one that isn't Laura Loomer, Donald Trump's failure in Alaska, that was broken down on by Chris Murphy right here.
Trump was asked what his message will be to President Zelensky on Monday. He said to make a deal. What is your message to President Zelensky heading into these high-stake talks tomorrow?
Well, I mean, listen, I would love to tell him that there is still a bipartisan consensus to support Ukraine in the United States Senate. But as I mentioned to you, we actually have a very tough sanctions bill that gives the president the ability to levy these new sanctions against Russia. But the Senate leadership won't even bring it up for a vote. Why? Because in the Congress, the Republicans essentially work for President Trump. And if President Trump tells them that his #1 priority is to keep Vladimir Putin happy, not to actually levy the kind of sanctions that would create a realistic negotiating table, Senate Republicans are going to listen. So this is a really dangerous moment because Senate Republicans, House Republicans are not willing to support Ukraine if Donald Trump won't give them the green light. And as you saw coming out of that summit, it seems that Trump's #1 priority is just keeping his friend Vladimir Putin happy.
Let me ask you.
Thank God Chris Murphy is making this clear, that it is Republican senators as well getting in the way of a peace deal, of an end to the war in Ukraine. That is clear, but it is not communicated enough. That the same Republicans who wear their Ukraine pin, who talk about how important it is to defend and to expand America's power and reach and values around the world, will not stand up for our allies because they are terrified of Donald Trump, that they will always bend the knee, that the party that tries to present itself and project out this macho, manly toughness, Ted Cruz thinks he's tough, Josh Hawley thinks he's tough, Markwayne Mullin thinks he's tough, they will always bend the knee to Trump and Putin because they are pathetic. They are pathetic. And so is Lindsey Graham. For more than just the fact that he doesn't live up to the values that he claims America should be presenting on the world stage, but he doesn't live his own life, apparently, according to Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer, I outed Lindsey Graham because I was under oath. Laura Loomer has spoken out for the first time since her bizarre deposition in which she accused Lindsey Graham of lying about his sexuality. The MAGA firebrand, whose influence on Donald Trump is growing, was pressed in her deposition about insults she made regarding the pieces of Marjorie Taylor Greene that I'm not going to specify, and Kamala Harris, as well as the sexuality of Lindsey Graham. Her claims that the senator is secretly gay became public when the deposition was briefly available on a court docket before being sealed. I was under oath, Loomer posted to X. I couldn't lie. The right-wing activist has long alleged that Graham, a South Carolina Republican, is secretly gay. She claimed that officials in the White House have told her as much. When is Lindsey coming out of the closet? We all know that you're gay, Lindsey, Laura Loomer posted to X last year, and that's okay. It's okay. It's 2024. There's nothing wrong with gay people. Loomer did not change her stance on Lindsey Graham's sexuality when it was brought up to her during a June 4th deposition. It's well known, Loomer said, Graham's sexuality. Several of Donald Trump's staff have told me in confidence that Lindsey Graham is gay. Bolger tried to move on, saying, "Hold on, Miss Loomer, there's no question." Loomer responded, "I know, I'm just explaining." Graham, 70, has never been married and has no children, and questions about the staunch conservative's sexuality have swirled for decades, but he has repeatedly denied being gay. Now, I don't want to attack Lindsey Graham for personal reasons. Well, actually, that's not true. I do want to attack Lindsey Graham for personal reasons, but I don't necessarily want to do it with what Laura Loomer has said. All that I'm going to say is that Lindsey Graham is a fraud. In everything he does, he is a liar and a hypocrite. So would this surprise me? Of course not. But that's not the reason that we hate Lindsey Graham today. It's because Lindsey Graham won't stand up for our ally in Ukraine, and we saw that with him melting down on Fox right here.
When it comes to land, I'm going to leave it up to Ukraine. But here's the reality. You're not going to evict every Russian soldier from Ukraine. That's the reality. There's Russian control and there's Russian ownership. Be very careful about rewarding Putin by giving him title to Ukrainian land through force of arms. That could jeopardize Taiwan. And if you're not thinking about the effect a deal in Russia, Ukraine has on China, Taiwan, you're making a big mistake. So I've got all the confidence in the world in President Trump. To our European allies, up your game. Quit complaining about what we're not doing in America and do more yourself. Put tariffs on every country that buys Russian oil and gas cheaply to benefit Putin's war machine. Do what Trump's doing.
Lindsey Graham attacking Europe and saying they're not doing enough with tariffs that Donald Trump won't impose, sanctions that Donald Trump won't impose. There's no tariffs or sanctions on Russia. Donald Trump isn't doing that. He is on Canada. He is on the UK, on France, on all of our allies, but not on Russia, not on Putin. And he says, oh, they're not going to be effective. We'll still do it. Why not? You tariff everyone else, but that's such classic Lindsey Graham, is just let me blame everyone else, refuse to take accountability, refuse to admit that Donald Trump has failed, which is what Marco Rubio also spent the morning doing, and it didn't go so well.
Mr. Secretary, what will Russia have to give up? What concessions will Russia, the aggressor, have to make as a part of this peace agreement?
Well, that's what these negotiations are about. And as you can imagine, everybody goes into a negotiation wanting 100% of what they want. That includes Ukraine, but obviously the Russians. And the only way to reach a deal on anything, whether it's in business or in politics or in geopolitics, the only way to reach a deal is for each side to get something and each side to give something. And that's been very difficult. If it was easy, this wouldn't have been going on for 3.5 years. Understand, the longer these wars go on, the harder they are to end, unfortunately, because one side is always looking for leverage on the other, in this particular case, the Russian side as well. And so I think that's the core of what we're trying to work through here. That's why Zelensky's coming tomorrow. That's why European leaders are coming tomorrow. That's why the president called them from the airplane, spent 2 hours in the middle of the night talking to them. And that's why we've been engaged with them every step of the way, is we are trying to find what can we get to that both sides can agree on. And it's been difficult. This is a hard issue set, but we're dedicating a lot of time to it, and the president deserves credit for dedicating time to it.
And I understand that these negotiations are ongoing, but can you name one thing that President Trump is asking Russia to give up in order to get peace?
Well, I'm not going to disclose those things, because if we do, then you can imagine our negotiations could fall apart. These negotiations, look, I know everybody wants to know what's happening, and to a certain degree that's important. But what's more important is that these negotiations work. And for us to run to the press, like you see these leaks sometimes that are completely inaccurate, and in many cases, sometimes you see leaks out there that undermine the negotiations. Okay, these negotiations, in order for them to be successful, require for us to allow both sides to agree to potential concessions or discuss potential concessions without it finding its way in the public sphere and creating all kinds of internal problems for one country or the other country. So here's the bottom line. We all know what the elements of such a deal. There has to be talk about what the territories are going to look like and what the border lines are going to look like at the end of this conflict. There has to be talk about Ukraine's legitimate desire for security in the long term, to make sure they don't get invaded again. There has to be talk about how Ukraine is rebuilt, and how do you rebuild a country that's been attacked as often as it has over the last 3.5 years. These are all key elements of any agreement. We understand that. And each side is, if there's going to be a deal, each side is going to have to give up on something. That's just a fact.
It's so interesting to me how different the posture is with those in Trump's administration around this negotiation as opposed to any other. Like, all you hear when they talk about tariffs is like, we're going to make them feel pain. We're going to really dig in. They've been getting us for so long. We're even in the playing field. It's like a real tough guy act, right? But with Putin, it's like, you know, I don't even know. Are we going to get? But we don't really want anything. Well, we don't even know at this point. It's just like, it's embarrassing. Like, they don't bring that same energy, right, to the actual important peace deal rather than the idiotic economic collapse you're causing. But they can't. Rubio can't answer. We could really see that right here.
because the president is the only leader in the world. If this is possible, he's the only one that can help make it happen.
Well, he's got the leverage over Vladimir Putin if he wanted to crush his economy or at least do more damage to it. But you have held off on those secondary sanctions. President Trump told Fox News his advice to President Zelensky is make a deal. Russia's a very big power, and they're not. You know, there's concern from the Europeans that President Zelensky is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup tomorrow. Can you
No, it isn't. That's not why they're
them?
coming as back. That's not true. No, but that's not that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're
well,
not
that
coming.
February
in fact,
Oval
they're
Office
coming
meeting
here
in
tomorrow
front of television cameras where President Zelensky
Do you know how many meetings we've had
down.
since then?
Oh, no, I know, and I was just up in
but we've had
Alaska
a bunch of
watching the
meetings
one
since
with
then.
Vladimir Putin where a red carpet rolled
No,
out
but
for the
with
Russian leader. It was
Zelensky, we've
very
had more
different.
meetings. We've had one meeting with Putin and like a dozen meetings with Zelensky. So, but that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans. We talked to them last week. There were meetings in the UK over the previous weekend.
And they said President Trump was
the
going to demand a ceasefire.
as early as Thursday. No. But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
But the president told those European leaders last week that he wanted a ceasefire. The president went on television, said he would walk out of the meeting if Vladimir Putin didn't agree with one. He said there would be severe consequences if he didn't agree to one. He said he'd walk out in 2 minutes. He spent 3 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and he did not get one. So there's some
because
mixed
obviously
messages.
things happened during that meeting. Well, because obviously look, our goal here is not to stage some production for the world to say, oh, how dramatic, he walked out. Our goal here is to have a peace agreement, to end this war, okay? And obviously we felt, and I agreed, that there was enough progress, not a lot of progress, but enough progress made in those talks to allow us to move to the next phase. If not, we wouldn't be having Zelensky flying all the way over here. We wouldn't be having all the Europeans coming all the way over here. Now understand, and take with a grain of salt, I'm not saying we're on the verge of a peace deal, but I am saying that we saw movement, enough movement to justify a follow-up meeting with Zelensky and the Europeans, enough movement for us to dedicate even more time to this.
He's just not good at this. He's really not. He doesn't have an answer. And every answer he gives is in contrast to the answers he gave in 2022 when he wasn't completely under Donald Trump's thumb. But that's the weakness of this administration. And it's why I constantly bring up that we have to talk about the fake tough guy act. Because that's what conservatives try to appeal with, that they have strength, that they have values, that they're grounded by something. It's not true. They're liars, they're crooks, they're pathetic. We're going to call it out on the show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.